Alright, time for another draftphysics.com, debatephysics.com also, but no one will engage in anything called a debate in the sense they won't produce counter arguments that are logical or anything called a piece of evidence demonstrating why they believe something. So they just believe it. They don't need anything called evidence, and they believe it because they like the story somehow, which I can't possibly understand why they prefer a physics that is just a religious narrative. It's just this bizarre story about ESP particles that aren't even existing in a space that isn't even space, where time is a place, and I mean, it's insipid. It's so silly, and in every time physics had a point where they could have stayed grounded and found a rational theory, every single time they chose the wackiest direction possible to go in. The silliest, crookedest, nonsensicalist road possible to walk, that's the one they would walk. So tell them the silliest theory and they'll go with that. And it's just everywhere, and it's just so obvious. All of this science is garbage. The evidence is absolute crap, and you people are defending absolute nonsense. I mean, so I started writing notes, and it's like so many arguments, and you just ignore them all. And I just don't understand how you could possibly keep defending crap that's just undefendable. I mean, it's 9.8, we could say 22 miles per hour. Okay, it's 1 hour, right? Not 10 hours. It's per 1 hour. And if you wanted to say that in time units and then say per second for some dopey reason, it's 1 second. One. There's no squared function here. You're not multiplying units times units. You're multiplying a number times another number. It's 1 times 1. It's not s times s. It's just so silly to have this argument. I mean, the fact that you can possibly imagine how gravity can work some other way than to be, you get 9.8 meters per second of velocity per 1 second. It's in 1 second units. You don't get it in 10-second units or 20-second units. It has to be 1 second or it's not 9.8. You can't understand that? And it's so obvious it's true, okay, because yes, it's 4 times the distance falling in gravity is only twice the time, and you're only going twice the speed, so it seems perfectly logical to understand that, yes, it's about how much time you're in the gravity will decide how much force hit you. I mean, duh. The fact that heavy things are heavy for all the time you're lifting them, they don't stop being heavy, because they're constantly getting hit by the force by the amount of time you're holding them. So yes, if you can lift them quickly, you're going to have to do less work than if you spent all day lifting them. It would be a lot more work. How can you not understand that simple argument? Breaking thin ice. I mean, sliding over thin ice. Obviously, as your velocity increases, the amount of weight per square inch you're putting on the ice reduces. Obviously. Because velocity means that you're going through the gravity kind of quickly, and less paint is hitting you because you're going kind of quickly. So you'll get the same paint on you, in this big chunk of distance as you will in this little distance when you're slowing down. And Galileo, 400 years ago, bothered to figure this out for you, and you're denying the basic mechanism. You're denying the simple facts. And, it's just amazing. So you have the law of the lever sitting there right in your face telling you one mass, okay, moving 4 velocity is the same as a 4 mass moving 1 velocity. It's telling you. I could put ton weights on a giant scale and they're going to tell you that's the absolute truth. I mean, it's an unassailable evidential fact that those two things equal each other. And you could crash them into each other. You could do them on a tug of war. You could do lots of different ways. You could measure it, and you'll see that's exactly the truth, that the two energies are the same. Okay, the one mass going 4 times the velocity is not going to overwhelm the foremass and move the whole collision in its direction. It's not going to happen. And now you can understand it's not going to happen. It's just amazing. Okay, so I thought of another way of explaining the paradoxical idiocy of talking about this nonsense of your silly idea, okay, that energy cancels. Okay, so it doesn't work in any molecular theory. So let's understand they don't use this nonsense in molecular theory. They think they have to conserve the energy of all particles moving. Okay, they can't cancel their energy. So if I let something in, it's got a 100 momentum. Well, I should be using the other pen, obviously. Alright, so it's got 100 momentum, and I let it into a pressurized vessel, and it hits something with a, we could use the 3 mass because that's going to be 150, but we could use a 9 mass or something, or just anything that still moves. It's not so heavy that it can't be moved. And then you're going to say that it's got 200 momentum going this way, okay, and now there's 100 going this way. So after it went in, I closed the vessel, and now trapped in the vessel is 300 momentum. 300 momentum. So it's applying 300 units of pressure to the vessel, and I'm going to put 100 in. Now, do you really think that can happen? And do you think that every time there's a collision between the 100, it's only going 50 now, okay, a 50 and let's use the 3 to 1 relationship. But this holds true for the other one too. So it might as well be 100 and 200, and your answer is going to be that it just leaves with 100. But in this case, we have 50 going in and 150 going in the bigger object, and you really think only 100 pops out of that collision. Now we know if we crash the fenders, we know we're going to get 300. I mean, we're going to get the 200 in momentum. We're going to get 200 worth of crushed fenders. We know if we crash the 150 into a brick wall, we're going to get a certain amount of crushed fender. We know if we crash the 50 into a brick wall, we're going to get a certain amount of crushed fender. So we know we're going to conserve the momentum when they crash into brick walls. And we know when they crash into each other, they're going to do the same thing. It's going to be just like, sort of, crashing into a brick wall, except the 150 is going to win in this case because it has more momentum. So it's going to be doing more crushing to the 50. But the fact is we're going to use the momentum. We're going to be able to conserve the 200 in energy that went in if we're crushing fenders. And you're saying somehow when it's elastic, we cancel. That somehow energy just disappears out of the universe. Just like you create it here. Well, it doesn't happen. It's so inconsistent with everything Newton talked about. It's not conservation of momentum, and it certainly violates the third law all over the place. All right. So, I just, I'd have to go over this and over this. Newton knew, like I said, do you think Newton didn't know that if he made a catapult? They had cannons, I think, by Newton's time. But anyway, if he made a catapult and he shot a 5-pound object off a 500-pound catapult, okay, that he could end up with, 1,000 joules of energy in the object that's shot off by the kinetic energy, by mv squared, and he'd only have 5 joules going this way. You think that's what he meant by equal and opposite reaction? I don't think he did. I don't think he believed that the real energy, okay, was disproportional. I think he clearly understood it's just momentum. 1,000 atoms going 1 mile an hour is the same as 1 atom going 1,000 miles an hour. That's Newton's understanding. And you people just are liars and fibbers and just pathetic that you sit there and play these games. I mean, right under the second law, he states, twice the force, twice the velocity. 3 times the force, 3 times the velocity. How is that an acknowledgement of mv squared? I mean, it's just nonsense to say so. It's just terribly rude to lie about dead people. Alright, so I do have stuff on this list, so I might as well read some of it. Okay, so they can't link to any really good evidence, right? So all they have is these fluky experiments by these flukes, Okay, but they don't have anything solid. And, physicist Michael was supposed to be a source, and he failed. Now, we know when he did the lever experiment, he cheated by putting the frickin' clay on it and ruined the whole damn thing. And then when he does the card experiments, right, he does 2 card experiments, and in the 2 card experiments, the same spring produces different momentums. Now, that's not supposed to happen, frankly. Okay, so, yeah, this is really just about the fact that these stupid carts they buy are garbage. All right, they have a whole bunch of, little tiny metal wheels, and they probably have heavy axles, because the whole point was, the smaller your wheel, the faster the axle spins. The bigger your wheel, the slower the axle spins. So the whole point would be is that you're just hiding a bunch of linear momentum as angular momentum that won't be seen in the velocity. So unless you measure the impact of the car, you're not going to see its real energy. Its velocity isn't its real energy because it has a bunch of metal wheels and axles spinning, and that's where it's hiding its energy. When it's going fast, it stores a lot of extra energy. When it's going slow, it's storing very little. Fact. Alright, I already went over the air cart crap. They're very sensitive. You got to really be careful how you set one up. Alright, so we got the 25 times to go 5 times as fast. We know this is not true. You know, if this was true, we would see it somewhere. We'd see spectacular evidence of it, right? I mean, 5 times the velocity, 25 times the damage. I mean, this would be a real story, especially in car accidents. I mean, it would be an insanely different outcome for people in terms of this speed thing being insanely critical because it's such an exponential growth in how much more damage you're going to do. But there's no evidence of it. Okay, there's a little bit of talk. I mean, the fact is that G-forces do increase, okay, but it's not quadratic. The fire hose example, right? I just turn the hose and all of a sudden I'm making free energy, or I'm destroying energy. I'm doing one or the other, right? I mean, if we say the total energy is when I have the nozzle the furthest and the pressure, the water's going the fastest, somehow that's the maximum amount of energy I get out of the pressurized water. And then every time I turn it, I just start losing more and more kinetic energy. Or the other way around, we say the real force of the water is when I have it open the widest and the water is just pouring out and hitting the ground. We say, they all have the same momentum, so we'll all agree it just has the same momentum, and Archimedes figured all that crap out. So, what's the real story here? Can I really change how much energy the water wheel gets hit by changing how narrow I make the stream of water? I really can't. It's just a fact. Alright, ballistic pendulum proves it. I mean, you can't turn it in a spaceship, right? So it doesn't matter what I do, I can never convert the speeding bullet into useful energy, ever. It's always just going to be heat, because you have to conserve the momentum. So if I convert the bullet's energy into momentum, it's going to be more momentum than it started with, right? Than it has. So that won't work. You can't make free momentum, and you know it. So you're always stuck never being able to collect any of the energy of these speeding particles. So a speeding, they say the helium nucleus is cosmic rays have, enough power to blow up the Empire State Building. Do you really think they do? Because they can't convert it into anything called momentum. All right. Heat isn't momentum. That's your theory. That's what you're defending as an idea. That somehow all this other stuff looks like momentum. I'd say even the stuff in a wire, the electricity. If you've ever seen electricity set loose, that is a high voltage power lines shorting, it's an insane amount of momentum, in terms of all kinds of crap is happening. It's a white hot event, and the ground is actually melting, and so how can you not think of heat as actually momentum? It's moving. It's stuff jiggling. It's momentum. Momentum isn't just moving in a direction. Momentum is doing this. That's momentum. And so it's just idiotic to think that you're going to hide the energy as heat and pretend heat isn't momentum, or that you don't need momentum to make heat. Of course you do. All right, the 5-ton train, 10-ton train thing. You think it takes a 20-ton train going 5 to equal a 5-ton train going 10. I mean, it's too silly. It's so stupid. All right, you know, and it's just idiotic, right? You can do the experiment very gracefully. You drop the extra weight on, use gravity to connect the two objects, and you're not using any of the energy of the object. You conserve 99% of the momentum, and yet half the kinetic energy is lost. And you're going to say, where's it lost to? Because you're never going to prove there's any heat in there equal to half the energy. So there's no experiments proving it. It's just statements. They just make these statements and you believe. Again, the lever proves it. The lever proves that mv squared don't work. Okay, that your silly notion that it's about how far something falls in gravity isn't true. It's about how much time it spends falling in gravity. All right, the rolling on ice, again, the rolling something on the ground, the whole, you know, Galileo figured it out, you know, 5, 3, 1, you know, that's how it's going to slow down. And the same way for speeding up, it's going to go the 1 unit of distance, then 3 units of distance, then 5 units of distance, then 7 units of distance. Yeah, come on. All right. So the free momentum experiments always also have a spring in them, you know. Which just makes it kind of a mess out of the experiment, because now you're not going to equally distribute the energy, because the spring essentially is going to make sure that the object you're hitting, okay, is going to get the energy plus, and the object that's going to reflect is going to get less. And if there isn't any ability to put the energy in, then obviously you're going to get more of a reflection. Okay, but that's all it does. Super elastic isn't elastic, you know, and they keep playing that game. They never do the elastic experiment. They always do the super elastic experiment. And when Professor Lewin did the regular elastic experiment, it came out perfectly as I stated it would, in the sense that the two-mass object only went less than half the speed. All right. What is this? Oh yeah, the small wheels on the cart. Okay, so, but you know, I got pages of this stuff. Alright, so the 9.8 meters per 1 second. So that if they put the 1 in front of the unit, and that's what they really should do because they're cheaters, so they should be forced to put the 1 there, because it's not any number of seconds. It's not seconds even. It's 1 second. It's 9.8 meters per 1 second. Alright. Then they can't cheat, right? If you see the 1 second times 1 second, you know it's not going to be second squared. All right, and you know there's no such thing as seconds squared. You know if you were doing meters, you would say, you know, it's 4 meters by 5 meters or something, and then you say the total is 20 square meters, not 20 meters squared. 20 squared meters, not 20 squared meters. Meters squared, I mean. You know, so it's just these little gimmicks, little games they play to cheat the truth. And that's all they keep doing. And it's, I don't know how, like I said, why are you choosing this nonsense theory that these little quantum particles don't know where they are, plus they're entangled, plus they're only outed when we look at them, but when gravity looks at them, they're not outed, they're not de-entangled, right? Or when some other light hits them, they're not de-entangled. Yeah, it's just such horse shit. I mean, how can you fall for this crap? All right. So I've talked about the free energy experiment. I just drew it with a pressure thing. It doesn't work. You know, the very idea that they say that somehow you can cancel energy, you can't cancel it. I use the example of, look, if I take 2 steel balls in a Newton's cradle and I let them go and I let them hit each other, no problem. They just bounce back. If I take those 2 steel balls and then as soon as they hit each other, I put a brace on so they can't bounce back, and there's a piece of paper between them, they'll burn it, because they have to convert the energy into something. They can't do nothing with the energy. All right, so it's just bullshit for you to think there's such thing as a canceling energy. It can't cancel. It has to be somewhere. Feynman said this, you know, by using a blocks of, you know, a kid's blocks as an analogy, and that the kid can hide them, but he can't destroy them. People are just so damn stupid. All right. Let's see. So moving on, okay, so the low friction cart, let's see if anything else. Yeah, well, it's just the point is that its velocity won't show its total momentum. So the cart's not likely to work as a way of measuring energy if too much of its energy is stored in something other than its linear motion. Alright, so that's probably enough of that. Alright, so it's down here, the reverse collision. Okay, yeah, well, the reverse collision makes no sense. Alright, so that's the page I already did. That's the page I already did. And I must have it. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. That's the problem. No, that's not the problem. Problem is the paper has two sides, and it's really hard to tell which way it goes. All right, so yeah, the last one argument's mostly the entropy stuff. How come it's on this page first? I just have to remember how that worked. All right, so yeah, I can go on and on about this whole entropy thing. All right, so I'll just do a little bit of it. It's all so circular, right? So you know, I showed the video the other day, played 3 parts of it, and it was all based on this premise that somehow energy is tending to defragment and disassociate. And of course it is, but what's it disassociating into? The very photons you're viewing me with. The energy moving in the universe that's going the speed of light. And that's what the sun is radiating. So the sun, in decompressing, is pushing stuff, the force, into the universe, which is compressing other objects it hits. So it's a compression force for the Earth. And we can take advantage of that by just turning it into electricity and pumping it into a battery. We're de-entropying. Okay? We're doing the opposite of entropy in storing the energy in a battery. Or we could store it as oil, de-entropy again. Or I had some other example. Or gravity itself. Okay, it's with the water falling. What are we doing when it's hydroelectric? We're taking advantage of the compression cycle. The water's compressing the earth, and we're stopping it from essentially doing that. You know, slowing that process down. So we're stealing the compression cycle. So, you know, if you could just, there's 2 cycles. There's the compression cycle, and then there's the decompression cycle. So that's all you have is compression and decompression. Pushing in and then expanding out. And that's all there is. And there's the 2 cycles. So nuclear energy is on the, take advantage of the decompression, you know, decompress some matter. And clearly burning stuff, decompression. So yeah, we can take advantage of either side of the cycle. There is no real side to the cycle. It's a circle, and we could take the energy any way we want. And this whole idea that it matters whether it's going from small things, you know, the force itself, creating big things, gravity, or we're taking advantage of the cycle where something's like being let loose. We're jiggling stuff. Electrons finally are the last thing moving, right? If atoms are jiggling, what's really happening? Electrons are moving. And every time they jerk out into space, they're pushing, they're compressing the field energy. And when they do that, they're also losing momentum. So they don't oscillate forever. They do, in fact, stop oscillating because they lose their energy every time they push on the universe. It pushes back. All right. Just like we get pushed back on Earth. All right. So let's see if there's anything else. Do I want to get into all the thermodynamic arguments? I mean, it's just every single subject. They just screwed it all. So let's see if there's something I highlighted here. So yeah, the fact is that the oscillations, it's just a cycle between force and matter, and when you push matter into condensations, okay, then they can push back out. Then they're storing energy, and you can get that energy back. It will eventually come back, is the real truth. All right, so obviously their theory is, it's very inconsistent, so there's no volts squared for wattage, right? So electricity is, I talked about it before. I mean, that's momentum, right? That's what I was trying to say with the whole, if you've ever seen high voltage shorted out, you can see the momentum in it, right? So the stuff in the wire has momentum. It's electrons moving quickly, and that's momentum. And that's what moves through the wire, is actual real momentum. All right, and there's no mv squared theory. There's no theory that you can increase the wattage by increasing because the voltage is squared. So there's no consistency with this theory and the rest of physics. It doesn't fit. And it should bother you. I don't think there's any frequency squared for light either. Okay, so all right, so I said here that heat is the smallest you get before converting the momentum into electron movement, which puts the force back into space. So the idea is electrons are the things being dragged, and protons. Obviously it goes for protons too. Their movement, okay, causes them to have to interact with the force, and when they interact with the force, they actually do in fact push on it. They compress it. They change a big frequency into a smaller frequency. They compress the amount of space that energy is in, and by doing that they lose their momentum. They have to sacrifice their momentum to increase the pressure in space. All right. The real point is the force bits are a certain number, and they never change. So they always exist. So they're either flying through space free, creating gravity, or they're caught up, stuck between matter, creating pressure for expansion. So they're either stored, bouncing back and forth between electrons and protons, or they're flying free. But that's it. The only two choices. All right. And obviously, if more energy is caught up in the matter, then there's less out in the field, and there's less pressure pushing stuff together. And therefore, the pressure pushing them apart is going to be more liberal to do so. So the whole universe is probably oscillating in terms of getting more compressed and then more expanded, and then more compressed and then more expanded. All right, let's see, something phase of energy decomposition. The final stage is, yes, is electromagnetic radiation. So if I just put something in space and it's hot, it won't jiggle atoms. It will just create radiation, photons. Extra photons will enter the universe, because eventually the matter will stop doing this, and all the force that was making that happen will be back out there in the universe. Alright, entropy is just the fact that big things break into little things. But yes, little things end up creating big things. Little things, the force ends up creating, compressing matter and making planets and solar systems and galaxies. Okay, they haven't thought straight about anything, perverted every concept. So yes, every single concept has been perverted by physicists. They just can't stick to a simple diagram of the mechanics. So it's supposed to be simpler pieces making the complexity, and they're doing it the other way around. They're saying our relatively simple functions are the byproduct of ESP particles that don't know where they are. Alright. You can tap the cycle on either side, so I did that. Let's see. Okay, yeah, so this, the polarizing thing is sort of a good argument. Let me see that. Because the polarizer proves to you that photons can be made invisible. Just a fact. So I can have a polarizing film this way, and I can have one this way, and I can block all the photons. So no photons are getting through. Now we know that if I put one that's diagonal in between there, I can get back 25% of the photons. So obviously the photons in this space were just damaged. They weren't non-existent. And this stuff doesn't absorb any heat. So the fact is that it's just the fact that polarizing film, when it blocks all the light, doesn't get hot. It's kind of telling you that stuff is still getting through the film, that there's plenty of energy still going through the film. It's just not in the form of photons anymore. It's in the form of pieces of photons. And that's all that this is about. So you're just changing the phase and making the photon invisible. And you put it back in phase and it's visible again. It can create electricity again. But it's still going to hit a surface, and it's still going to compress it, and it's still going to vibrate it, and it's still going to do a lot of other things. Now, whether it can cause heat, it might just be able to cause radiation. So it's really hard to say how you can measure those in broken photons, because essentially that could be the argument that that's what gravity is. And obviously we don't have a gravity detector. So that's the only problem, is I don't think you can prove it by measuring it, because there's nothing you can measure. There's no device that can measure the gravitational force, especially on small scales like this. Alright, but the fact that it's possible should be something you're considering, that it's quite possible to convert photons into something other than heat, into broken radiant, it's electromagnetic radiation, but it just isn't in the form of a visible photon. Alright. Amazing, I can't read any of this stuff. Break some, make some, yeah, okay. Once scattered. Okay, so I didn't want to go into a whole explanation of how the polarizer works, but the point is the idea is you're polarizing in a dimension, that is, you're scattering in a dimension with a polarizer, and then if you scatter in both directions, well, then you're done. You're not going to be able to put it back together again. If you scatter in one direction, you have hope of putting it back together again. But if you scatter in both directions, then the information is too disorganized for you to reorganize it. Alright, simple enough argument, actually. Alright. Let's see, where does the photons energy go? So this is a question you should be asking, right? If a polarizing film is going to block all of the photons, you should be asking, well, where's the energy of the photons? Can you show me it as heat in the film? Or if it's not heat in the film, where is it? You should ask these questions, but you haven't asked any of them. You just don't care that the physics doesn't make any goddamn sense. Alright, so I didn't mention the anvil pendulum thing, right? Where, they basically say I can take a special piece of glass and I can bang it into an anvil and it'll bounce 200 times. It'll reflect. And their argument is that each time that happens, I've put an equal amount of momentum, twice as much momentum, into the object. And so if we put the anvil on wheels, that is, so now the anvil can move, it's still the same amount of energy it's putting in, right? It's 199. So if we start with 100 momentums in, we get 200 in terms of how far the anvil is going to move. It's got 200 momentum. And then the ball is going to go back up with 100, with 99. And it's going to hit again. And it's going to put almost the same amount of energy in again. And so, yes, it loses a little bit each time, but it's going to hit 20 or 30 or 40 times, adding a significant amount of momentum each time. And so how do you explain that? Yeah, there's no explanation. It's nonsense. It doesn't happen. You can't make free energy. Alright, well, that's probably enough of a premise. It's probably enough of a video, frankly. But we'll do some comments and such, just to clean them up. But like I said, I didn't even get into the whole wave-particle thing. I mean, I have proven that a particle model can perfectly explain, and it's really consistent with the math that they cheat on, right? They cheat because, they draw this silly picture of the double slit. It's every single subject that just made such a terrible mess out of everything. And it sucks that you people are such dupes. Alright, so they draw the double slit and they talk about two waves. But what number do they use in the math, right? They don't use this wave center. They don't say, what's this distance? No, they say, what's this distance? Or what's this distance? That's what they ask, the question. And then they're going to predict either the envelope pattern or they're going to predict the little pattern. If they want the little pattern, you use this distance. If you want the big pattern, you use this distance. That's the simple facts. Fact is, this whole thing happens at these surfaces. That's where all of the fringe photons come from. They don't come from anywhere else. They come from those surfaces. Those are the point sources. And it works perfectly, and it's perfectly sensible that if I break the photons on the surface, now they're invisible like the ones in the polarizing film, they're not resolvable, and I just put the pieces back together, and I have a 50-50 chance of putting them back in phase or take them out of phase. And so I get an on and off pattern. I mean, simple explanation, works fine, perfectly explains, no entanglement, no superposition, no interference nonsense. Alright, so this asshole says, okay, oh, that's Gibbon again. Yeah, what a jackass. So he's nearly blocked now, but we'll see. Here, yeah, that's the one. So who cares? Huygens. Huygens said explicitly, who cares? Where did Huygens prove? Leibniz said it explicitly. Leibniz said explicitly, 4 pounds dropped 1 foot is the same energy as 1 pound dropped 4 feet. He said it explicitly. The lever says it's wrong, okay? And it says it explicitly over thousands of years. It says this is a reliable device for defining equalities. And it says exactly the opposite. It says, if you want to have an equality, you have to move the one mass 4 times the velocity. Okay. Huygens explicitly said the quantity of motion can increase in collisions of hard bodies. Who cares? Unless you consider t the opposite direction. I don't know what. Why is some of that cut off? Oh, it's that this stupid search thing. Why is it doing that? Oh. I selected. You can select a maximum of. I don't want to select anything. Fuck you. What the hell? What's that? Yeah, I hate YouTube. I just hate it. I'll just reload it. Okay. Can increase unless you consider the direction and subtract the opposite direction. So I'm just saying, you're saying you can cancel momentum. I'm saying it's impossible for you to cancel momentum, cancel energy. All energy is motion, and all of it has to be accounted for. He also understood the conservation of mv squared. Well, I understood it as what? He understood that it completely violates the law of the lever. Okay, fine. He understood that it creates free momentum, and that's okay. Alright, the source has been linked to you before. What source? There's no source of anything. There's just a statement, mv squared. There's no source of any experiment. There's no proof. There's no evidence. There's nothing. And Newton referred to Huygens saying, yes, look, we know that Newton didn't read everything Huygens wrote. We know that Newton didn't pay all that much attention, maybe. And obviously most of what Huygens talked about had nothing to do with mv squared. So you want to play the game? Go ahead and play a game. We've already played this word game. I'll just say it again. Newton said it clearly under the second law, right under the second law. Twice the force, twice the velocity. 3 times the force, 3 times the velocity. Why would he say that? Why would he have a third law if he believed you could make free kinetic energy? If he believed that bullets could fly out of guns with 2,000 joules and the recoil of the gun was only 2 joules, if he believed that was true, why the fuck did he write a third law? So fuck you. Okay, this is just redundant and a waste of goddamn time. This guy knows what happens when hard bodies collide. That's what Newton said. Oh, that's funny. Newton agreed with Huygens. That is 100% clear. So he called Huygens a guy? I don't think that happened. You're just getting to be full of shit now. Okay. No way. No way Newton said he called somebody a guy. All right. It doesn't, I mean, it wrote it in Latin. I don't think Latin has a verb or an adjective or anything for the word guy. Okay. It doesn't take, so this is the moronic Piro, it doesn't take more energy to move at a velocity. So of course it does if you're in a real, as I stated, in a real environment with air and roads, then it does. Okay, so if you're in free space, of course it doesn't. And so nothing changes. Well, how does the argument change any? Exactly. I mean, how exactly does the argument change? You're saying it takes 25 times the fuel to push something in space 5 times as fast. Well, go ahead. Show me some glimmer of evidence. Some inkling that that's possibly true. Once up to velocity, an object will just keep going at that velocity. Well, not here on Earth. What takes a different amount of energy is the accelerating them to that speed. So again, says you, and it doesn't matter. Go ahead, show me the experiment that proves that. Show me any experiment where they just accelerate 2 objects to a speed and it takes 25 times the fuel to go 5 times as fast. Show me it's spinning a motor. Spinning a motor. Just spin a motor, Pyro. You probably have a motor somewhere in your house. Okay, I know you can buy these devices that measure how much energy something's using, so spin the motor 5 times as fast and then show me that it's using 25 times the electricity, you fucking lousy lying sack of dirty, smelly, cruddy shit. The fact that your physics has 0 experiments showing any of this, 0. It has no experimental evidence, and here you are defending it as good science. No experimental evidence, but it's good science, and you have the right to sit there and write this tripe on people's videos saying it's true, it's true, it's true, because I say it's true, and because it's true, because I know it's true, because I say it's true. That's science. No, that's fucking religion, you kook. You fanatic. Okay, you phantasmagorical pussy shit with your imaginary nonsense, your little Smurf village you want to live in. Once moving things just keep moving, and all you have to do in something like a vehicle is compensate for friction. And exactly, and that's a big thing to compensate for, moron. I'm not a scientist, just I mean, obviously it takes a lot of fuel to go to from New York to California. You know, you can't just start off and go 50 miles an hour and there, it's all done. I've used all the gas I'm going to have to use. No, I mean, duh. I'm not a scientist, just a student. Could you please explain? Fuck you. I mean, I've made 5,000 videos. I don't know, 7,000. I don't know how I've made thousands of videos. Please explain in basic terms for me what is wrong with his concepts. So again, you're really this fucking stupid. Did you read the fucking email I posted? Did you read what I actually posted on their fucking board? There's not a single criticism of a goddamn thing Wolfram ever spoke in the fucking content. You fucking goddamn retard. I mean, god damn. I mean, you can't pay any attention at all. I'm calling Wolfram a douche because he doesn't pay any attention to anybody but himself. That's the only voice he can hear. And even when you agree with him, he couldn't care less. If it's not about Wolfram, if it's not going to glorify Wolfram, he doesn't want to know about it. He's not a scientist. He's a showman. He's a whatever you call it. He's just in it for the graft. That's it. Money, money, money. Fucking retard. Alright, so this is some dopey link to something stupid. I can't remember what it was, though. What the hell was it? I thought I opened it today. Well, I guess I didn't. I have to open it in a private window, but I think it's something really stupid. It's something really stupid, so I should go find it just because it's really stupid. I can't do it in this browser, though. Yeah, that didn't even do the whole link. Alright, copy link. Alright, I'll pause and I'll go find it. And I probably won't play it. I'll probably just tell you, oh, it's that stupid thing. Because it's some stupid thing I saw. Okay. It's a 3-minute video by an amateur astronomer claiming he did the Eddington experiment with a dinky little telescope from Earth, of course. Okay. And we know it's far from a perfect eclipse. Like I say, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, not too good. He might have been 3 o'clock. So no way. just absolute crap. 3-minute video. I mean, come on. Ridiculous. I'm sure no, they're always talking about publishing and editing and, edited journal. I'm sure no edited journal is going to print that pile of shit. All right. With the simplest stereoscopy experiment, one could show how your theory about neutrons being an electron and a proton is utterly false. So this is just, I don't even know what to say. It's so obnoxiously stupid. I mean, I can show you physicists drawing a neutron's decay and pointing out that it's an electron and a proton and a neutrino. Now, you know the neutrino has almost zero energy, so it's obviously just an electron and a proton. I just can't even imagine how this asshole could type this shit. We, in fact, classify atoms by number of their protons. Yeah, so what? You classify them that way. You think, again, that electrons and protons have a weight far below our actual physical weight. So somehow you think they don't add up to our weight because you used mv squared to measure the weight of an electron, and you got it all wrong. Okay, if you add and remove an electron, you get a ton on the same atom. You get an ion on the same atom. So if you add and remove a neutron, you get an isotope. Yeah, so what's your point? Obviously, one's a nucleic component. The neutron is in the nucleus, retard. The electrons are on the outside, shit for brain. They're in different energy configurations, so of course it would make a difference which one you broke. If you're breaking the nucleus or you're just extracting an electron. The electrons are weakly held. The nucleic parts are strongly held. Okay, if you add and remove a proton, you get a new atomic species as far as our categorization is concerned. To get to the point, these differences in composition of atoms in terms of protons, neutrons, and electrons can be measured through a large variety of experiments. So says you they can. Says you. Okay, and this goes to Stern, Gerlach, all these other bullshit experiments. You don't even know what's in an electron beam. Okay. Why do they put a gas in when they want to see electrons, right? Isn't that sort of cheating? Because aren't the atoms of the gas going to be affected by whatever field you create? Okay, for example, different isotopes of the same atom will produce slightly shifted absorption emission spectra. Yeah, so what's surprising there? The difference of these species due to the addition and removal of neutrons would be even more clear in the mass spectrometry experiments. Right. Again, you're saying you're analyzing an atom where you've changed the nucleus. So how is this prove that neutrons aren't made out of an electron and a proton? Since it relies on the mass of the isotope, says you it relies on that. I'd say it relies on the shape of the nucleus. That's what decides what you're going to get back as light. Okay, in particular, adding a proton-electron duo instead of a neutron would lead to different results. And of course they should, because as individual particles, they're not going to be able to join the nucleus. You can't just throw a proton in a nucleus and it sticks, right? I mean, there's rules of its geometry. Nucleuses are very strict geometry. That's why there's only 100 of them, retard. You think there's some other reason why there's only 100 configurations? Well, there's only 100 configurations because it's a very rigid geometry. It's like putting magnets together, You're obligated to respect their authority, and so they have to be a certain distance from each other. But you could do it, right? You could create magnets in positions, and if you could prevent them from flipping, you could put magnets in positions and they would stay in those positions. Because there would be enough pull in one direction, enough push in another direction to just force them to stay in those positions in space. You could make them float. Okay, in response to if I shoot two objects with inverse velocity to mass ratios, for example, 10, 5, 5, 10 into gravity, your formula says one object will have twice as much energy as the other at liftoff. Why would my formula say that, retard? So that's just a lie. Okay, here you're clearly wrong. Let A equal Vm be a 10 mass going 5 velocity versus a 5 mass going 10 velocity. Well, your theory says one has twice as much energy. Okay, so he's saying that's not true. Here's where you're clearly wrong. Let V divided by m, I don't know why I would do that. So acceleration is velocity divided by mass. Oh, okay, maybe it's meters. So you're not going to put any numbers in, right? And you're just going to play with the units again. All right, to be the velocity to mass ratio, the kinetic energy is m times v squared. It says u. Oh, there's no point in doing this, right? Because they don't put real numbers on any of these velocities. Okay, it's per 1 second. Every time you say per second, it means per 1 second. It never means per seconds. It means per 1 second. Put the 1 in, and then you can't multiply your unit times your unit. Okay, when it's a 1 unit times a 1 unit, that's all you're going to get is 1 unit. Okay, which clearly shows that generally inverting the velocity to mass ratio doesn't double or halve the energy, so that doesn't prove a goddamn thing. So fuck you, as usual. Fuck you, crap. So no links to any evidence, nothing. So they're never going to show us it taking 5 times the fuel to move something, to spin a motor 5 times as fast. They're never going to show it, ever, because it doesn't happen and their theory is crap. They're never going to explain why a lever clearly, a balance clearly makes it obvious what the truth is. And it clearly tells you that the one mass has to move a 4 velocity to equal a 4 mass at 1 velocity. It proves it decisively, and they'll have no explanation for how levers are lying. Let's see. Dude, are you for real? What is this? Well, again, I'm not your dude, so you can go fucking get what you deserve. Which is to be called somebody's dude or boy. I'll call you boy. Little girly boy. Little girly boy. Little pussy shit. Little fucktard. I'll call you little fucktard. There's 5 minutes I'll never get back, so yeah, fuck you. I'm lucky I didn't see you, because that would be, you know, that would be retina I would never get back. I think people are not willing to engage with you because they don't have the energy or patience to. All they have to do is produce fucking evidence, Jerry. Reliable, decent experimental evidence. Now, have they done that? Do you really think it's the best way to do a linear card experiment is with cards that have metal wheels? Do you really small metal wheels, little tiny metal wheels? Do you think that's the way to go? See, you don't answer any of these questions, Jerry. You're such a fucking petty piece of shit. Alright? Oh, I've just raised at least, whatever, 30 points in this video. You won't address a single one. Explain how the lever is lying. Do a diagram and show us how levers really work, you liar. Okay. Let's see. You mentioned Money to Thunderfoot. Seem to recall you had, I thought I read this already, so yeah, fuck this. So you know, the fact is I offered him 4,000. I offered him 2, and then I emailed him again, you know, a year or 2 later, and said, no, I'll give you 4. And no response. I'm just saying that this is, you're saying I'm totally wrong and I should be so easy to debunk. Why wouldn't they take the money and just say, look, this annoying fucker's on the internet insulting scientists, insulting me, insulting science, degrading it, doing all this petty bullshit, this evil, nasty piece of crap. And then wouldn't it be a glorious moment for all of you? For all the whole audience, where he debunks me entirely and proves me to be an imbecile and shows how Leibniz wasn't just making it up? You know, can't he do that? Shouldn't he do that? Shouldn't that be the obligation of your science? You're just so weak. You're so petty, so weak. Let's see. Have you ever read a comment the lion likes? Oh, Jesus. I personally believe it does take 25 times the fuel to spin. You are taught this in school. What example do they use? I'm sorry, they didn't teach it when I went to school, at least. So that was the only good news for me, I guess. But you don't laugh? Everybody didn't just laugh when the teacher says it takes 100 times the fuel to go 10 times as fast? Doesn't just laugh? Oh, fuck. I know. So, yeah, superior mind can play with him. Alright, so that's all there is, really. The substance of it, anyway. So, yes, I will delete the Piro mush. Mush, just mush. And certainly this bullshit, like I said, it's an amateur Eddington experiment done. I mean, Eddington dragged a 12-foot telescope to the top of a fucking mountain in Africa. And you're going to sit there and tell me this asshole does the experiment better. Eddington had glass slides that could resolve 10,000 stars. They were so precise and well made. 10,000 stars on one glass slide. You think this guy's digital camera is up to the test? You know, fuck you people. You're just so full of shit. Alright. I'll leave that one alone, I guess, since Superior Mind played with him. I probably should just, I just get rid of it. It's just mush. Fuck that. Alright. Alright, I'm just gonna give, sorry, Superior Mind, but this is just a waste. Just mush. Alright. So, till the next time and such, just so depressing to live on this planet of, you're all scummy liars. I mean, not to concede that your science isn't very tight. That's all. Even if you would just say that. Even if you just say, I can sort of get what you're talking about. I mean, they really should have done these experiments. I mean, we really shouldn't have to have an argument about whether, how much energy 1 pound dropped 4 feet versus 4 pounds dropped 1 feet. We really shouldn't have to have this argument. We shouldn't have to argue about what happens when, a car is going 50 miles an hour versus a car going 10 miles an hour, and whether the car going 50 miles an hour can do 25 times the damage. These should all be tests and experiments that have been well done many times over. We shouldn't have to argue about it. Again, 400 times better resolution from space. You should be able to concede. Gee, they really should have done that Eddington experiment. I mean, it only takes 5 minutes. Literally, it only takes 5 minutes. I mean, okay, 10 minutes total. You have to take 2 pictures. One. Let's see, you don't have to worry about the sun. You still have to take 2 pictures. Okay, so one when the Earth is here and compared to the gravitational body, and the other one when it's on the other side. Something like that. Well, anyway, it's a 5-minute experiment. And they haven't done it. Haven't tried it even. You think that's good physics? Well, again, I'll just say it. I think it's humiliatingly bad science, and I don't know why you should just concede that, yes, we do look like we're just Catholics because we're just talking shit. We're just telling you to believe something, and we can't produce any evidence defending it. You should be able to just concede that any good atheist should be pretty skeptical of the crap we're saying because it sounds just like a religion. The holy entanglement. It's just bullshit.